Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you had a nice weekend. I know I did. Watched a ton of football, played a little pickup basketball. I haven't done that in a while. Just a really good weekend all around. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's on YouTube, Twitter, 1430 AM, or maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app. Anthony Richardson, once again, did not play during, the Colts game. He's now missed 2.5 games, right? Left the game halfway through the Steelers game. Thought there was a chance he was going to play against the Jaguars. Wasn't quite ready. And then he didn't play yesterday either. And one of the most memorable moments of my young childhood, watching football alongside, my dad and my brother, was January 20th, 2008. I'll never forget that day. I was 8 years old. Okay, I just turned 8. And I saw something that would leave an impression on me for forever. January 20th, 2008 was the day that I watched Phillip Rivers play in the AFC Championship game against the New England Patriots, despite having a torn meniscus and a torn ACL in his right knee. I'll never forget it. If there's ever an excuse not to play due to injury, I would say that it's when your meniscus and ACL are both torn in your plant and drive leg. It didn't matter, though. There was no way that the Chargers were going to hold Phillip Rivers out of that game. Phillip Rivers simply wouldn't have allowed it because he was, in every sense of the word, an elite competitor. He was playing no matter what. When he tore his ACL and meniscus, you knew it didn't matter. You knew he was playing the next Sunday against the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. You knew he was going to play, and he wasn't going to let the Chargers hold him out of the game. Now, we have Anthony Richardson, who hurt his poor hip 2.5 weeks ago. Okay? Took a helmet right on the hip. That hurts. It doesn't feel good. But come on now, it's been 2.5 weeks. Anthony Richardson appears to be soft. And that is a bigger issue than the accuracy struggles that he has shown up through this point. You can't play in the NFL if you're soft. You can't play in the NFL if every little bruise that you have holds you out. Several players on both sides of the on both teams yesterday, Colts, Titans, played despite having some sort of injuries or some sort of injury. Will Levis, starting quarterback for the Titans, has a grade 2 sprain in the AC joint of his throwing shoulder. If you don't know what that is, Anthony Richardson had a more severe version of that injury last year. That required surgery. They talked about it before the game. Every time Will Levis threw the football, he felt some sort of pain in his shoulder. That is what and it didn't matter. Will Levis played anyway. That is toughness. That is something that is a requirement if you're going to play in the NFL. Josh Downs missed several days of practice last week because of this toe injury that he's had, which is a big deal for wide receivers because of the way that they cut and they're running full speed. And he still played. He led the Colts in receiving yards, had a receiving touchdown. And that wasn't all. He also returned kicks. Okay? Even though he was hurt, even though he was banged up, he still played anyway. Then there's Michael Pittman Jr., a guy who went from almost being placed on the IR this last week to playing without a snap count yesterday. He said, Coach Steichen, I'm playing every play that I can, and in the biggest moments, dial my number up because I'm going to be ready. And he was. That is toughness. And Coach Steichen, after the game, was asked about Michael Pittman Jr. and the toughness that he displayed not only yesterday, but the toughness that he has shown throughout Steichen's time in Indianapolis with Michael Pittman Jr.?
Just showed up. I mean, like, again, I said the toughest guy I've ever been around. And when we needed to play, he made the big-time play there on third down. And then we were in a situation, obviously, where we had to throw the ball there because of the 2-minute warning. And obviously we had to play a little bit there. And to hit him on the little crossing route there on the little naked play coming up big. And just a credit to him and his toughness. Credit to the offensive coaches. Jim Bob does a hell of a job with those guys every week getting them prepared. I mean, it was just a gritty team win.
Shane Steichen right there talking about the toughness that Michael Pittman Jr. displayed yesterday. Almost went on IR. He almost went on IR with a lower back injury, but he played anyway. And despite the back injury, he made two of the biggest plays of the football game yesterday. Right? The obvious one is when he went up and made a contested catch in the end zone that resulted in the Colts taking the lead. It wound up being the game-winning touchdown. Impressive play, right? The Titans bring pressure. Joe Flacco off his back foot is like, Michael Pittman Jr., I hope you're in the right spot. And more importantly, I hope you can go up and make this catch. And he did. It was impressive. I'd like to see a little bit more of that from Michael Pittman Jr., right? So that happens. Big play. Then he made another contested catch for a first down right before the 2-minute warning that really iced the game. Okay, Tennessee had one more timeout at that point, but it felt like the game was over once the Colts got that first down. He did all of that with a messed up back. But for some reason, Anthony Richardson, 6'3", 250 pounds, yeah, that guy couldn't play with a bruised hip. Come on now. You got to play. And as soon as I called Anthony Richardson soft for not playing, I know there are people in their cars yelling at their radio saying, oh, Jonathan, you're dumb. Like, he wanted to play, but the Colts held him out. Anthony Richardson wanted to play, but the Colts didn't let him. Okay, that's what they said during the broadcast. And that might be true. Maybe the Colts asked Anthony Richardson not to play. Maybe they told Anthony Richardson, hey, man, one more week. But here's my thing. Elite competitors like Phillip Rivers play through injury all the time. All the time. Okay, if Phillip Rivers can play on a torn ACL and a torn meniscus, then Anthony Richardson should be able to play football with a bruised hip. Okay? Put a little hip pad on that spot and let him play. Okay? Elite competitors, tough guys, football players play in week 6 when they have a bruised hip. It's really that simple. Once again, I watched Michael Pittman Jr. play yesterday with a messed up back that almost put him on IR. I watched Josh Downs play yesterday after not practicing most of the week because he did something to his toe. I watched Will Levis play yesterday despite having a grade 2 sprain in his AC joint in his throwing shoulder. But Anthony Richardson couldn't play because he had a little bruise on his hip. He had a little boo-boo. Come on now. Now look, let's say that Anthony Richardson did want to play. Let's say Anthony Richardson was adamant, like, hey, man, like, I want to play, which I believe. Like, I do think that these guys want to play, right? Because they're constantly competing for their next contract. If you're Anthony Richardson, you're trying to prove that you aren't injury prone and that you can be the franchise quarterback. What bothers me is that Anthony Richardson allowed the Colts to keep him out. Like, that can't happen. Okay, Anthony Richardson has to stand his ground and be assertive. Okay, like, he has to demand to play. And look, it's hard being 22 years old and looking at people that are older than you, have been in the league longer than you, and, in a lot of ways are your bosses, and being like, no, I'm going to play anyway. Like, that's not an easy thing to do for a 22-year-old in any job, in any profession. But as the future of the franchise, he has to be more assertive. He has to demand to be on the field so he can play and develop. That is what Anthony Richardson should have done yesterday. And here's the thing. He was clearly capable of playing. He wouldn't have been the emergency third-string quarterback if he wasn't capable. And also, he said something last week on Wednesday, October 9th. He was asked about his health. And he made it pretty clear that as of Wednesday of last week, he could have played. Here's what Anthony Richardson said last week on Wednesday about his health.
Oh, yeah, way better, compared to last week. I was able to move a little better, able to get going, start running and throwing, so feeling good about that.
Can you play quarterback?
Can I play quarterback?
What all goes into it? Are you able to physically, are you back to doing that?
Yeah, for sure. I can run, I can throw, I can do, the stuff that they want me to do in the offense, so we're just going to take it day by day and see how the rest of the week is.
Did you hear that? Anthony Richardson right there. This was last week on Wednesday. Last week on Wednesday, Anthony Richardson said this. He said he could do everything that he needed to do in the offense. He could run, he could throw, he could cut, he could do all of it. He said this on Wednesday. Those were the words that came out of his mouth once again on Wednesday of last week. You mean to tell me that 4 days later he got worse or he couldn't play? Come on now. I understand that the Colts want him to be healthy. But it's week 6 in the NFL, for crying out loud. Everyone is dealing with something. Michael Pittman Jr. almost put on IR. Josh Downs dealing with a toe. Will Levis, grade 2 sprained AC joint. Come on now. The Colts have to let him play. And Anthony Richardson, once again, shouldn't have let them hold him out. He's got to be more assertive and say, you know what, no, this is my team, my franchise. You drafted me 4th overall. I'm playing in this important divisional game on the road. He has got to step up and demand a play. Okay? And now look, part of this is on the Colts because they didn't let him play. They told him no. Here's the truth. You would think that the Colts would have a little bit greater sense of urgency to put him on the football field and see if he's the future or not. That that's what you would think. When I look around the NFL, okay, more specifically, when I look at the Tennessee Titans, the Titans are ahead of the Colts currently. You say, Jonathan, what are you talking about? The Titans clearly suck. Will Levis isn't very good. Their defense is, but Will Levis, he's not very good. What do you mean the Titans are ahead of the Colts? The Titans are ahead of the Colts because they know that Will Levis isn't the future of their franchise. He started 14 games now. I am of the belief that you have to give a quarterback an entire season's worth of starts before, really giving final judgment on whether or not they can play. Will Levis is almost to that point. It looks like he can't play, right? And the Titans know that. That gives them an advantage. It does. They know that he's not the future of their franchise, so they know that they need to recalibrate. The Colts don't know that. They have no idea what or who Anthony Richardson is going to become. Okay? This is the NFL. Everyone's hurt week 6. Everyone is dealing with something. Anthony Richardson undoubtedly should have played yesterday. Okay, Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, I know you're listening. You drafted a running quarterback. He's not going to be 100% healthy outside of week 1, week 2, and maybe week 3. From that point on, there's going to be some sort of nagging injury that Anthony Richardson is going to deal with because of the style of which he plays football. It is ridiculous for the Colts to expect for Anthony Richardson to be healthy all year. Take a look at Cam Newton. When he was in the league, he was always dealing with some sort of nagging injury. And when you look at Anthony Richardson and the way that he plays football, he's going to deal with the exact same thing throughout his entire career. Waiting for him to be 100% is simply ridiculous. And the Colts have to understand that, and they have to allow him to play when he's not 100%. Now, the Colts have a bit of a luxury because they have Joe Flacco, the second best backup quarterback in the NFL. he played well enough to win yesterday. I do want to talk about the game itself and not just the Colts being disappointing as a franchise, not allowing their 4th overall pick of 2 years ago to play, even though he was clearly healthy enough to play. I'd like to actually talk about the game, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to talk about Joe Flacco when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hope you had a nice weekend. Head over to YouTube, search for Indy Sports Ticket, subscribe, watch the stream there. I got a guy in the chat trolling me, which is cool. Talking about Joe Flacco, all that kind of stuff, which is perfect because that's actually who I'm about to talk about. Joe Flacco he's a bit of a luxury. Okay, he gives the Colts peace in not playing Anthony Richardson. Okay, like the Colts know that if Anthony Richardson isn't 100% or whatever, that Joe Flacco can go out there and play well enough to give the Colts a chance, and that is a luxury because there are a lot of teams in the NFL that don't have that in their backup quarterback, and luxuries are great. When I was growing up, my great-grandma reached a point where she couldn't drive anymore. And she was kind enough to give her car, 2004 Toyota Corolla, a real, babe magnet. She gave her car to my family. And she made it clear that it was supposed to be driven by her great-grandkids, so me and my 3 siblings. My youngest brother, Nate, he still drives that car 20 years later after it was made. And it was a real luxury for my family. My siblings and I, we didn't have to borrow one of my parents' cars whenever we needed to go somewhere or wanted to go do something. And when my dad's car broke down, it became a real luxury because he was then able to use this 2004 Toyota Corolla that my siblings and I had been using. Luxuries are nice. Having extra things that are reliable is nice. And Joe Flacco is a nice luxury for the Colts to have when they occasionally need to rely on him when Anthony Richardson is broken down. The Colts have the luxury and had the luxury yesterday of sitting Anthony Richardson because Joe Flacco has been good enough in the games that he's played. When he came in against the Steelers, he did just enough not to blow the game. Against the Jaguars, he looked superhuman because he played against the worst passing defense in the NFL. This week, against the Titans secondary that led the NFL in fewest passing yards allowed per game entering the game against the Colts, he didn't look so superhuman. To be fair, Joe Flacco still played well enough to win. He was 22 of 38, which was only a 58% completion percentage. I believe that if Anthony Richardson played a game and had a completion percentage that low, a lot of people would be upset. But since the 39-year-old quarterback, who would be out of the league if it wasn't for the Colts, because the Colts were the only team this offseason to offer him a contract, did it, because that 39-year-old did it. It's one of the best performances we've seen in decades, right? According to some crazy Colts fans. In addition to Joe Flacco's 58% completion percentage, he threw for a whopping 189 yards. His yards per attempt was only 5, which is that's terrible. And he threw two touchdowns and one horrendously bad interception. Luckily, though, the Colts were playing the Tennessee Titans, who have the worst starting quarterback in the NFL. Will Levis is awful. I think we all knew that before the game even started. Okay? And as unimpressive as Joe Flacco was, because he wasn't bad, he was just unimpressive, Will Levis was straight up bad. And the Titans clearly don't trust him to throw the football. We saw why. Their first drive, when they ran the ball for 7 yards, and then on 2nd and 3, they threw a screen pass that went for 0 yards, and then they ran another screen pass that went for 0 yards. It became evident in that moment how little the Titans trust Will Levis to throw the ball past the line of scrimmage. Anyway, Joe Flacco is good enough to play when Anthony Richardson is out. But the ceiling of the offense when he's in is incredibly low. It's a lot of short throws, right? Which are nice, but it's just not sustainable. It's hard to score when you're only picking up 5 yards a play. It's hard in the NFL to go on 10-plus play drives and score. It's incredibly difficult. And when Joe Flacco is in, that is how the Colts have to score. Look at all 4 of the Colts scoring drives yesterday. All 4 of them consisted of 10 plays or more. And they only scored 20 points. Like, that's it. Like, that's not very many points. It's hard to score a bunch when you aren't explosive, to have an elite offense, which with this defense, the Colts need or are going to need against better teams. You have to be explosive offensively. And Joe Flacco just doesn't provide that. He doesn't, right? He doesn't hit big throws down the field. Okay. The run game with him in isn't as good. I know Jonathan Taylor's been out, but if Anthony Richardson was in, the run game would be better because he's a threat to run. And obviously he can run it himself and all these things. I think that, you and I can agree on, even if you think that Joe Flacco is the better quarterback. Okay. Joe Flacco can win games against the Titans and the Jaguars. Okay. If Joe Flacco enters a game and the Colts already have a lead, he can do enough to hold on to it. But if Flacco, if he has to play again next week against the Dolphins, then the Colts will be fine because the Dolphins might be the worst team in the NFL. Actually, that's not true. It's the Tennessee Titans, but that's beside the point. Then, like I said, the Colts will be fine if for some reason Flacco has to play quarterback again next week. But the following week, when the Colts go on the road to play the Texans again, if Joe Flacco runs out there, the Colts will undoubtedly get their doors blown off. They aren't explosive enough offensively with him in the game to beat the better teams. They played against one of the better pass defenses in the NFL yesterday, and Joe Flacco wasn't very good. Okay, while Joe Flacco is a luxury as a backup quarterback, the second best backup in the NFL behind Jake Browning of the Cincinnati Bengals, while he's a luxury, and while he's done a good job these last 2.5 games, and while he's reliable, the Colts still clearly need Anthony Richardson if they want to beat the better teams in the NFL. They barely beat the Titans yesterday. Like, let that sink in. The Titans are bad. Okay, and they barely beat them. They didn't run the ball well. They didn't throw the ball particularly well. The reason why the Colts won yesterday is because Will Levis is awful and because Shane Steichen is simply a better coach than Brian Callahan. As of right now, Brian Callahan hasn't coached in very many games. He'll get better as time goes on. Right? But the Colts won this game because Will Levis is terrible and because of coaching. While Joe Flacco outplaying Will Levis did play a role, a rather large role, in the Colts win yesterday, I would be wrong to ignore Shane Steichen's contribution. Okay? And part of that's play calling, but I really want to talk about more than just the way that he called plays. Okay? With that being said, though, I thought he called plays well. Like the first drive when the Colts have everything scripted out, like those drives every single week have been things of beauty. Okay? Like that opening drive that's scripted always seems to look good from the Colts. The naked bootleg to Michael Pittman Jr. late in the game to pick up a first down before the 2-minute warning, that was great. That was a great play call. Okay, like that was the perfect time to take the risk. It was clear that the Titans were selling out to the run. They got one-on-one coverage, play action, Michael Pittman Jr. running a little crosser, Joe Flacco, good throw, good catch, first down, ball game. Okay, I thought he was aggressive, Shane Steichen. I thought he was aggressive at the right times, and I thought he was conservative at the right times. More than that, though, the real reason why the Colts won yesterday is because the Colts were more disciplined than the Tennessee Titans were. The Colts committed 5 penalties yesterday and gave up 40 yards off of them. The Tennessee Titans committed 11 penalties and gave up 113 yards off of them. That was a major difference in the game. The fact that the Colts were disciplined enough not to jump off sides, not to, false start, not to commit a bad defensive pass interference. They didn't do anything like that. And when you look at the Colts and how they scored the football, a large part of it was because of the penalties that the Titans committed. On the Colts' 5th possession, they kicked a field goal to tie the game at 10 apiece. It only happened because Tennessee committed a pass interference that wiped a Joe Flacco interception off the board. Okay, on the Colts drive that allowed them to kick a second field goal and make the game 17-13. It only happened because of another pass interference penalty on Tennessee and a roughing the passer penalty on Tennessee. Okay, that was like 20 yards right there. That's a fifth of the football field. On the Colts' second touchdown drive, the one where Michael Pittman Jr. went up and made a great play, made a tough contested catch in the back of the end zone. The only reason why that happened is because L'Jarius Sneed committed a pass interference that resulted in a 33-yard penalty that moved the Colts into the red zone. 6 plays later, 6 plays in the red zone is nuts. 6 plays later, the Colts scored a touchdown. 3 of the Colts' 4 scoring drives were majorly aided by the Tights committing undisciplined penalties. Say what you want about Gus Bradley and his high school defense and how all he does is run cover 3. The Colts and Titans both played a lot of man-to-man defense yesterday with their corners. The Colts' discipline and being able to not play with their hands and not, grab receivers too early or anything like that was a major difference in the game. Samuel Womack is awesome. He played so well. Calvin Ridley was targeted 8 times yesterday and didn't have a reception because Samuel Womack did a really good job covering him. Not really good. He did a fantastic job covering him. Jalen Jones got away with a defensive pass interference late against DeAndre Hopkins, but actually, it wasn't defensive pass interference because if it was, then the referees would have thrown a flag. Okay. Right, Jalen Jones and Womack both played very well yesterday. Okay. But a large part of that was the discipline to not get too grabby. That doesn't need to be overlooked. It's a large part of why the Colts won. Disciplined teams don't commit penalties. They don't. And that discipline starts at the top with head coach Shane Steichen. Okay. I thought he had the Colts ready to go. I'm going to talk about the defense when we come back, but the offense, I thought that the game plan was good. I thought the play calling was good. Joe Flacco did just enough for the Colts to win that game. And the defense, while there were some rough spots, they did just enough for the Colts to win as well. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, I want to talk about the defense that hasn't been very good this year.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys had a nice weekend. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's Twitter, 1430 AM in the Indianapolis area. Maybe you're listening via the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps. Or maybe you're watching on YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Colts defense yesterday only allowed 17 points. But don't get too excited. Relativity, who you're playing against, is very important. I played pickup basketball on Friday night. Okay, my wife was out of town. Didn't really know what to do with myself. Friday night's usually date night. We go out, we do something fun. Right, not always just dinner. Usually something a little more than that. So she was gone. She was in Washington, D.C. So I went and I played pickup basketball on Friday night. Had a blast. I won't lie. Your boy right here cooked. Okay, was just giving out buckets. Just play. I played really well. Okay, and I was given a great compliment while I was getting buckets on Friday night. After breaking a guy's ankles, making him touch the earth, I drove left, threw up a pump fake. My defender flew by. I stepped through and hit a nice little shot. Really good move on my part. I won't lie to you. Like I said, I was cooking. I played really well. And after that series of events transpired, and amidst the ooze, right, because that's what happens when you break someone's ankles in front of other people, I heard a guy on the opposing team yell, quote, "That cold-ass white boy has a bag." Felt pretty good, okay? I felt really good about myself from that point on. I may or may not have pulled up from 35 feet and airballed after that happened, but either way, that guy said it. He can't take it back. It's too late, okay? Like I said, I felt good about myself. That's a great compliment. The truth, though, is that the only reason why it appeared that I, quote, had a bag, for those of you who don't know what that means, it just means you have like a bunch of moves in your bag that you can go to score. That's basically what it means. The only reason why it appeared that I was good at basketball, the only reason why it appeared that I, quote, had a bag, was because the guys I was playing against, very simply, weren't very good. Okay, if I had done that against, any NBA player, any overseas player, then I would have been made to look terrible, right? They'd have been like, why are you throwing pump fakes? We know you're not shooting that, right? That's what would have happened. Who you're playing against matters. Okay, this Titans offense isn't very good. As unimpressive as Joe Flacco was, Will Levis didn't throw for 100 yards, and his yards per attempt was 3.5. It's not very good. Okay, that's terrible, right? And the Titans will likely be looking for a new quarterback in this next draft. So don't get excited about the defense. Okay, the defense didn't get better. All right, Gus Bradley didn't go in and revamp this whole thing, and now the Colts are going to play great defense the rest of the year. That didn't happen. Don't get excited about this defense like Shane Steichen was after the game. Here's Indianapolis Colts head coach Shane Steichen talking about the defensive performance. This is how he opened his press conference. He opened it talking about the defense. Here's Colts head coach Shane Steichen.
Ryan Kelly's got a calf. I'll start off with that. Gosh, what a great team win. I mean, they're never easy, especially going on the road against a division opponent. Shout out to our defense. Shout out to those guys. They stepped up big time there in the fourth quarter for us, getting those stops. Shout out to our defensive coaches with the plan they had. I think they only had, 239 yards. So great job by the defense. So hell of a team win.
That was Indianapolis Colts head coach Shane Steichen talking about the defense and how much better they played and all those things. Once again, don't get excited. Okay, I talked about this last week. Okay, I said that the Colts defense would look better, and it did, right? But it's not because the Colts defense got better. Okay, that's just the simple reality of it. The only reason why the Colts defense looked better is because they were playing against one of the worst offenses in the NFL and the worst quarterback in the NFL. Okay, now you have to give them some credit because they made the plays. But my opinion on them isn't changing because they stopped Will Levis and the Titans. Okay, if they play well again this week at home against the Miami Dolphins, my opinion on them will not change because the Dolphins offense without Tua, who is once again going to be out, at least that's what it seems like, isn't good. Okay, the Dolphins are last in the NFL in average points per game at like 12.5. Okay, so once again, that Colts defense may go out there and look good, but it's not because they're good. All right, and even yesterday, the Colts defense had some struggles. The Colts gave up over 5 yards a carry. How do you give up 5 yards a carry to an offense quarterbacked by Will Levis, where they clearly didn't want to throw the football past the line of scrimmage until they absolutely had to late in the game, and when they did, he threw a really bad interception to Julian Blackmon. Okay? And they still found a way to give up 5 yards a carry. The run defense wasn't good. Giving up a 23-yard touchdown run on 3rd and 19 is unacceptable. Okay? Every team with a young quarterback on 3rd and 19 is running a draw play in that spot. It was the most predictable thing that happened all day. And the Colts gave up a touchdown on it. I don't understand how that happens. Stuff like that can't happen. And that play in and of itself, I feel like it reveals the issues with this Colts defense. It was obvious what was coming, and they weren't prepared for it. Okay, that's things, those are things that bad defenses do. Okay, the secondary, they did their job. I actually heard Julian Blackmon's name called on the broadcast, even outside of the interception. I thought he was around the ball a little bit more than normal. But he was a little bit better. Not much, though. Jalen Jones, Samuel Womack, each played very well out at the corner spots, right? Jones covering DeAndre Hopkins. That's never an easy thing. Calvin Ridley targeted 8 times, didn't have a reception. The secondary did their job. They played as well as they should have, given the quarterback in the offense that they were playing against. But the front seven, the part of the defense that's supposed to be awesome, the part of the defense that Chris Ballard has sunken all this money into, once again, wasn't very good. It wasn't. And, as long as that continues to be an issue, and it's going to continue to be an issue, this Colts defense is going to continue to not be very good. Speaking of not very good, Will Levis. Okay, don't be surprised when the Titans draft a new quarterback this draft. When I was in early middle school, right, talking like 6th grade, collected baseball cards for fun. I've got a few hundred of them, in a cardboard box, probably in my parents' attic somewhere. Okay, you used to collect baseball cards like crazy. Okay, would buy them whenever I could, all that kind of stuff. And there was an adult in my church who also collected baseball cards, but he collected them very seriously. Like he was going to trading card conventions every weekend and, buying different cards for a lot of money and, trying to pull different rookie cards and all these different things. Like he was a very serious collector. And, my dad told this guy that, that I collected cards. And so this guy, being nice or trying to be nice, invited my dad and me along with him to one of these conventions. So, hey man, show up, it's a cool place to trade. You can find some other different cool cards, all these different things. And my dad tells me about this. I'm like, yeah, like that sounds cool. Like I would like to go to that. I'd like to see what other people have and all these things. And we had a long conversation about it. And my dad ultimately was like, you cannot go. And I remember being a little frustrated because it's like that's a cool thing to go to. Like trading cards, trading, sports cards, those conventions are usually pretty cool. So my dad says no. And I remember asking him why. And his response was, Pretty simple, and it made a lot of sense. He said that he didn't know anything about the value of the cards that I had. And I definitely didn't know the value of the cards that I had, right? Like I was still in this phase where I was like, that's a cool photo. I like that player. I will take that player. Like that was like where I was at with trading cards. Like I was just looking for cool photos of players that I liked. And my dad was concerned that if we went to one of these conventions and I brought my cards with me, that we would get taken advantage of, right? That I would trade something away that was worth a lot and in return get something not of equal or greater value. It's important to know what you have. And I mentioned this earlier in the show, but the Titans have an edge over the Colts because they know without a shadow of a doubt that Will Levis is not the future quarterback of their franchise. Okay? Firm believer that you need a full season's worth of starts before you can make an accurate, opinion on who a quarterback is. They are 14 starts into Will Levis's career. There hasn't been very many positives. It feels like he's gotten worse going from last year to this year, which is not a great thing, okay? Usually you want guys to get better, not worse. And so because of that, the Titans know that they can move on. The Colts, meanwhile, don't have a clue because their young quarterback can't stay on the field, and when he's healthy enough to play, like he was yesterday, the Colts decide to hold him out, and that's just wrong, right? And this is ultimately why not playing Anthony Richardson when they could have is so frustrating. Teams like the Panthers, the Titans, the Raiders, really bad football teams, they all have an advantage over the Colts right now. They all know, as of today, going into the draft this year, that they're going to take a new quarterback. The Panthers in Carolina know that Bryce Young isn't their future, okay? Because Andy Dalton hasn't been very good, wasn't very good yesterday, and the Panthers don't care. They're not putting Bryce Young back out there. That's an advantage because they know what they're going to do going forward. The Titans, same thing. They know that Will Levis isn't their future, right? So they can adjust accordingly. The Raiders know that Aiden O'Connell isn't their future. Okay, teams that know who they are and what they have possess an advantage because they then know what direction to move in. The Colts have no idea what they have at the most important position on the team. They have a guy who a year and 6 games into his career has only played in 8 games in which the Colts are 4-4. He's only started and finished 4 of those games. Okay? As of right now, the Colts know that they have what appears to be an injury-prone young quarterback who struggles with accuracy and a 39-year-old backup who isn't going to be around much longer and doesn't play very well against the better defenses in the NFL. He wasn't good against Pittsburgh, and he wasn't very good yesterday. Okay? They don't know what they have. And that is a major issue, right? And that starts at the top with Chris Ballard. Chris Ballard doesn't know what he has anywhere. He sees 9-8 and just assumes that the Colts are good everywhere and extends everybody. That's what he does, and that's why the Colts have peddled in mediocrity for so long. There's a misunderstanding about what they have at almost every position. But here's the thing, even if they figure out what they have at, receiver and offensive line and defensive line and secondary and linebacker, and they adjust accordingly, it won't matter unless they figure out what they have at quarterback. It's the most important position on the field, and it's not close. I'm not telling you anything new with that one. But the Titans, Panthers, and Raiders are in better spots right now compared to the Colts because they know what they don't have at the quarterback position. Meanwhile, the Colts have no idea, and when they were presented with an opportunity yesterday to get a little bit more information, to see Anthony Richardson play a little bit more, they passed on it, and that is an issue. Staying in the AFC South, while the Tennessee Titans will likely be drafting a new quarterback in this upcoming NFL draft, Doug Pederson will be looking for a new job soon. Actually, probably not. He's probably just going to take all that money that the Jaguars owe him and go to Cancun or wherever and have an absolute blast. Okay, like I'm just waiting for the notification that Doug Pederson has been fired. They're 1-5. Trevor Lawrence is getting worse. Okay, like that notification should come through at some point today. I'm just kind of waiting on it. I have no idea what time it is in London, but I'm expecting for us to find out here at some point. They might wait until they get back from London. I don't know who the owner of the Jaguars is, but I doubt he wants to pay for like an extra ticket to send Doug Pederson back to America. Okay, but that franchise or that coaching, I mean, look, when your head coach stands at the podium after starting 1-5 and goes, we need a culture change, that is not a good sign. That means that guy's about to get fired because the head coach sets the culture. Okay, so Doug Pederson, he's going to get fired any day now. Any day now. I am interested to see what they do with Trevor Lawrence because obviously they gave him the big extension this offseason, right? $55 million a year. That's what he's going to make on average. Okay, like that's a lot of money. And because they're paying him that much, they probably won't try to trade him. But at the same time, like they could try. There is undoubtedly a team or two out there that would be willing to give up, a second or a third round pick for $55 million a year man, Trevor Lawrence, right? Because when you're the former number 1 overall pick and you possess that much talent and people have seen you produce, because we have seen Trevor Lawrence produce in the past. He's won a playoff game. He's done all those things. Like there's undoubtedly a team out there that would be willing to trade for him. Okay, so just looking at the AFC South as a whole, the Texans, great spot, 1 loss on the year. They're playing really well. They blew the Patriots out over the weekend, the least surprising thing ever, given that it was Drake May's first career start. In terms of the future, they are in the best position in the AFC South because they know what they have at quarterback, and what they have is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Titans seem to be in a good spot. A lot of good players on that defense. They're probably going to draft another quarterback at the end of the year with a high draft pick, so that's an advantageous thing. The Colts, I like what they have a head coach. Questions about the future at the quarterback position, and then you got the Jaguars at the bottom who are about to fire their head coach and have questions about the quarterback that they just decided to pay $55 million a year to. So the AFC South going to continue to be interesting for many, many more years. When we come back here in about 5 minutes, Anthony Richardson held out again. Major issue there. I've got thoughts on him when we come back here in about 5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys had a nice weekend. Hopefully you had a good time watching the Colts pick up an ugly win over the Tennessee Titans. Neither team accumulated 300 yards of total offense. That is not good, to say the least. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, whether that's, YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, Twitter at Ticket1430. You can follow me there as well at __ Jonathan Smith. Maybe you're listening via the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps, or maybe you're listening the old-fashioned way, just on the radio, 1430 AM, cruising around Indianapolis. Ugly game yesterday, but hey, a win is a win is a win. That's all that matters. Colts are 3-3, right? Have an opportunity to be 4-3 this upcoming Sunday when they play against an atrociously bad Miami Dolphins team. I haven't checked the line on that yet, but the Colts are undoubtedly favored. Wouldn't be surprised if they were favored by a touchdown. That's how awful this Miami Dolphins team is. Okay, and as a Dolphins fan, I say that truthfully, they're really bad. Okay, there's a lot of speed, there's a lot of athleticism on this Miami Dolphins team, but ultimately, I mean, they're bad without Tua. There's really just no other way to put it other than that. The Colts are only favored by 3.5. As of today, I would very willingly take that, but we'll see. Hopefully, Anthony Richardson is back next week. Anthony Richardson was out again yesterday. January 20th, 2008. I was 8 years old. It's a very important day in my football watching life because I saw something that would leave an impression on me for forever. Okay, that day was the day that I watched Phillip Rivers play in the AFC Championship game against the New England Patriots, despite having a torn meniscus and a torn ACL in his right knee. I'll never forget it. The dude limped around on offense for 3.5 hours. Right? Didn't complain, just competed. He just competed, and it was great, and it was so much fun to watch, and I'll never forget it. Seriously, like if there's ever an excuse not to play due to injury, I would say that it's when you have a torn ACL and meniscus in your plant and drive leg. It didn't matter, though, because Phillip Rivers was an elite competitor, and there was no way he was going to miss that game. There's no way he was going to allow the Los Angeles Chargers to keep him out of that game. He was going to limp around on the field for 3.5 hours, and he was going to play because Phillip Rivers was simply an elite competitor. He was the same way here in Indianapolis when he was the quarterback for 1 year. He was as simply an elite competitor, right? And that is an important thing to have on any team in any sport. Right. But in football, when you have to play through injuries, I think that it's even more important. And Anthony Richardson didn't play yesterday, even though he undoubtedly could have. Okay. Anthony Richardson appears to be soft. He does. Okay. And that is a bigger issue than the accuracy struggles he's had. You can't play in the NFL if you can't play through injuries. It's that simple because everyone's hurt always. And we saw several players that were hurt yesterday in that Colts-Titans game play in spite of the injuries that they were dealing with. Will Levis, starting quarterback for the Tennessee Titans, had a grade 2 sprain in his AC joint of his throwing shoulder. For reference, Anthony Richardson had a more severe version of that injury last year that required surgery. Spraining anything in your throwing shoulder when you're consistently having to throw the ball isn't fun. Okay? Like I tore my labrum in college, very different from spraining your AC joint. But I'll never forget throwing baseball and trying to play through that. It was gruesome. It was not fun. It was no fun whatsoever. And for Will Levis, playing through that yesterday is impressive. Look, I don't think Will Levis is very good. He's played enough games now that I'm more than willing to say that, but I do have an immense amount of respect for him playing through that pain yesterday, right? Because that isn't fun. Josh Downs missed several practices last week with his toe injury, which is a big deal for a wide receiver, the way that those guys cut and move in and out of routes. And he not only played what felt like every snap on offense, right? There was no snap limit for him. Okay, he played what felt like every down on offense. He led the Colts in receiving yards. I believe he also led them in receptions. But not only did he do that, he contributed on special teams. He returned punts yesterday. Like, what? He's hurt, and he's out here returning punts. That's toughness. That is an important thing that every football team, especially this Colts team, needs to have, right? And then the guy that stood out above the rest is Michael Pittman Jr. He went from almost being placed on IR with a back injury. Look, doing anything with the hurt back isn't fun. Okay, don't know that from experience, but having talked to people who have had some back issues, yeah, sounds terrible. Imagine playing full-blown tackle football with a hurt back. Okay, he was almost placed on IR, and he was like, you know what? I'm good. No IR needed. I'm actually going to play on Sunday. No snap count. That is toughness, and that is what this Indianapolis Colts team needs. And Indianapolis Colts head coach Shane Steichen was asked about the toughness that Michael Pittman Jr. put on display yesterday.
Just showed up. I mean, like, again, I say the toughest guy I've ever been around. And when we needed to play, he made the big-time play there on third down. And then we were in a situation, obviously, where we had to throw the ball there because of the 2-minute warning. And obviously we had to play a little bit there, and to hit him on the little crossing route there on the little naked play coming up big. And just a credit to him and his toughness, credit to the offensive coaches. Jim Bob does a hell of a job with those guys every week getting them prepared. I mean, it was just a gritty team win.
That was Indianapolis Colts head coach Shane Steichen talking about the toughness portrayed there by starting wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. playing despite the injury in his back. And despite that, injury, he made the two biggest plays of the game. Obviously, him going up, making a contested catch in the end zone that resulted in the Colts taking the lead late was big. Okay? Like the play of the game-winning touchdown, right? Going up, making a contested catch in the end zone. It was great. Hopefully, we can see him do a little bit more of that this year as the year progresses. Then he made another contested catch for a first down right before the 2-minute warning that iced the game. Those were two of the biggest plays in the game, and he made them despite being hurt, despite almost being placed on IR. Okay, he did all that with a messed up back, but Anthony Richardson couldn't play because he had a boo-boo on his hip that he got 2 weeks ago. Come on now. And as soon as, I talked about Anthony Richardson being soft and not playing, there's some people in their cars that really like Anthony Richardson. They're probably yelling at me, telling me how the Colts held him out, which is true, right? And they're telling me that Anthony Richardson wanted to play, but the Colts wouldn't let him and all this other kind of stuff. That's what they said on the broadcast. And look, that might be true. It might be. But here's where I land. Elite competitors, Michael Pittman Jr., Phillip Rivers, Josh Downs, Will Levis, play through injury. Elite competitors play in week 6 when they have a bruise on their hip that they suffered from 2 weeks ago. Okay, they put in a little hip pad to help protect the bruise, and then they say, let's go play some football. Let's go win this important divisional game on the road. Okay, now let's say that Anthony Richardson wanted to play, which I believe that he did. Okay, I think it's rare that, in football especially, that you find professional athletes that don't want to play. Okay, there are very few athletes in the world like Ben Simmons who are like, no, I think I'm going to sit over here in street clothes and watch. You guys go have fun. Like, that's not a common occurrence in the world of sports. Definitely isn't in the world of football. So I do believe that Anthony Richardson wanted to play. What bothers me, though, is that Anthony Richardson allowed the Colts to keep him out. Like, that is the thing. Like, he should have pulled a Phillip Rivers. He should have said, hey, guys, it's just a hip bruise. Or in Phillip Rivers' case, it's just a torn ACL and a torn meniscus. I'm going to play. That is what Anthony Richardson should have done. And look, I'm not a let's analyze their personality type of person, because I don't really know these people. Like, I don't know Anthony Richardson. I just know what I see him say in press conferences and what I see him do on the football field. But he's very clearly a relaxed guy when you hear him talk. And there are moments where, like, that's a good thing, but there are also moments where that's not a good thing. Like, I would have really appreciated a fiery Anthony Richardson being like, no, I'm playing. I'm not missing another game unless I absolutely have to. That is the message that Anthony Richardson should have sent to the Colts and this training staff. Okay. But he was, relaxed. Oh, it's fine. We can wait one more week, whatever. And once again, like, he was clearly capable of playing and he didn't. And that's just a hard thing for me to get behind. Just listen to what Anthony Richardson said last week on Wednesday about his health. Once again, last week on Wednesday, 4 days before the Colts game against the Titans. Here's what Anthony Richardson had to say about his health.
Oh yeah, way better. Compared to last week. I was able to move a little better. Able to get going, start running and throwing. So feeling good about that.
Can you play quarterback?
Can I play quarterback?
What all goes into it? Are you able to physically? Are you back to doing that?
Yeah, for sure. I can run. I can throw. I can do the stuff that they want me to do in the offense. So we're just gonna take it day by day and see how the rest of the week is.
That was Anthony Richardson, Colts starting quarterback, I guess. That was him on Wednesday of last week. 4 days before the Colts played the Titans. He said, quote, he could do everything that he needed to do in the offense. Those were the words that came out of his mouth once again on Wednesday. You mean to tell me that 4 days later he wasn't healthy enough to play? Like, come on now. Like, I understand that the Colts want him to be healthy. But it's week 6 of the NFL season. Everyone is dealing with something. Michael Pittman Jr. almost put on IR. Okay, Josh Downs missed practice because of a toe injury. Will Levis, grade 2 sprain in his AC joint in his throwing shoulder. And Richardson couldn't play because he had a little boo-boo on his hip. The Colts have to let him play. And Anthony Richardson shouldn't have let them hold him out. Right? This is where Anthony Richardson has to be assertive. And look, it's hard to be 22 years old and to look at the people in charge of you and much older than you and tell them no and tell them how they're supposed to do things. I meet with my boss every Wednesday. Okay, every Wednesday I walk in his office and we pull audio and we talk about my show, and he's like, this is how you can get better at this. Maybe you should try this. Maybe don't do this. All those things. And there have been times, not many times, only like once or twice, where I've had to look at him and be like, I don't know. I don't think that's right. All right. And those are important conversations to have. But when you're younger and new to something like Anthony Richardson is, it is difficult to look at older people who have been doing the thing that you're doing for a long time and to tell them no. Like, that's not easy. But for Anthony Richardson, as the hopefully the future of the franchise, that's the way that he's viewed right now, at least, he has to be more assertive. He has to demand to be on the field so that he can play and develop. So part of Richardson not playing is squarely on him. He has to be more assertive. Part of this as well, though, is on the Colts. You'd think that there'd be more urgency to get him out there and see if he's the future or not. Okay? Like that's what you would assume. But let's be honest, this is kind of a survivor move from Ballard. Oh, like, we don't know if Anthony Richardson's good enough yet. I guess I got to stick around one more year. Right? So I think that's part of it. But the concerning part about this and why Anthony Richardson truly needs to be out there is because the Titans are ahead of the Colts right now. You say, Jonathan, what are you talking about? They're 1-4. They're a bad football team. Colts 3-3. Hey, watch out. Okay. But here's the thing. The Titans know that Will Levis isn't the future of their franchise because they've put him out there, even though he had a grade 2 sprain in his AC joint. They're like, we have to figure out if there's any upside with this guy. So sorry, Will, that your shoulder hurts a little bit, but you're going to play today. Okay, that's what they did yesterday, and that was the right move. And that's what the Colts should have done with Anthony Richardson. Hey, man, sorry you have a boo-boo on your hip. We're going to tape you up. We're going to put a little extra hip padding in there, and you're going to go play. That is what should have happened yesterday. Once again, this is the NFL. Everyone's hurt week 6. And here's the other thing. Chris Ballard, I know you're listening. You drafted a running quarterback. You shouldn't expect for him to be fully healthy all year. That's just an unrealistic expectation. When Cam Newton was in the league, he was always dealing with some sort of nagging injury due to how Anthony Richardson, or because of the way that he played football, right? With Cam Newton, the way that he ran the ball and how physical he was, like he was always hurt. And Anthony Richardson, who plays a similar style of running and all those things, he's going to deal with the same thing throughout his career. He's going to consistently be hurt. And the Colts have to understand that and allow him to play when he isn't 100%. But part of why they didn't let him play is because they have Joe Flacco, who's been good whenever he's had opportunities. I've got thoughts on Joe Flacco and his performance yesterday when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys had a nice weekend. Hopefully you enjoyed a Colts win. Nice bounce back after going on the road and losing in the House of Horrors against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, Joe Flacco gives the Colts peace when they don't play Anthony Richardson. Luxuries are great. I think everyone loves a luxury, something that they don't need, but is nice to have. Okay, when I was growing up, my great-grandma reached a point where she just couldn't drive anymore, right? Just got too old, didn't have the reaction time necessary, and she was kind enough to give her car, 2004 Toyota Corolla, to my family. Right. And, she made it pretty clear that the car was for me and my siblings, right? Like she wanted us to have something that we could drive around. And it was great. Like I said, it was a real luxury for my family because my siblings and I didn't have to borrow one of my parents' cars if we needed to go somewhere. If two of us needed to go to different places, one could take the Corolla, the other one could take my dad's car because no one wanted to drive my mom's minivan. Okay. And it was a real luxury. And then when my dad's car broke down, he was able to take the car that my siblings and I had been using, right? Like it was a nice luxury to have. Luxuries are nice. Having extra things that are reliable is nice. Joe Flacco is that luxury for the Colts. Okay, he is reliable. Okay, when Anthony Richardson's hurt, they can have faith that Joe Flacco is going to step in and run the offense. Okay, and on Sunday, the Colts had the luxury of letting Anthony Richardson sit, even though he shouldn't have sat, because Joe Flacco has been good enough in the games that he's played. Okay, when he came in against the Steelers, he did just enough for the Colts to win that game. And honestly, if Justin Fields catches a snap, that game might have ended differently. Okay? When he played against Jacksonville, he looked superhuman because he was playing against the worst pass defense in the NFL, who week in and week out just continue to prove how bad they are. And then this week, against the Titans secondary that led the NFL in fewest passing yards allowed per game, entering that game against the Colts, Joe Flacco didn't look so superhuman. To be fair, he still played well enough to win. He was 22 of 38 passing, which is only a 58% completion percentage. That's not very good. Okay? I believe that if Anthony Richardson played a game and had a completion percentage of 58%, a lot of people would be upset. Okay? But since the 39-year-old quarterback, who would be out of the league if it wasn't for the Colts, because they were the only team in the offseason to offer him a contract, since he's the one who had a 58% completion percentage. It's one of the best performances in the past 100 years, according to some of these Colts fans. Okay, in addition to his 58% completion percentage, he threw for a whopping 189 yards. His yards per attempt was only 5, which is terrible. And he threw 2 touchdowns and 1 horrendously bad interception. Luckily, though, the Colts were playing the Titans, who have the worst starting quarterback in the NFL. And as unimpressive as Joe Flacco was, because if you were impressed by that Joe Flacco performance, then you're not very hard to impress. You're just not. As unimpressive as Joe Flacco was, Will Levis was outright bad. And the Titans clearly don't trust him to throw the football. Just look at that first possession. They hand the ball off to Tony Pollard. He picks up 7 yards. And then the Titans are like, let's throw 2 screen passes because we don't trust Will Levis to throw it past the line of scrimmage. Okay, when that is your opposing quarterback, you're going to win a lot of games. Okay, Joe Flacco is good enough. He is reliable when Anthony Richardson is out. But the ceiling of the offense when he's in is incredibly low. It's incredibly low. It's a lot of short throws, okay, which are kind of nice to see at first, because it's like, ooh, like Anthony Richardson might have missed that throw, right? It's nice having a quarterback who can complete a 3-yard pass, I guess. Okay, but it's just not sustainable. It's hard to score a lot of points when you're only picking up, 5 yards of play. It's hard to go on 10-plus play drives in the NFL. And when you do that, you oftentimes need some help. And when you look at the Colts and how they scored this game against the Titans, all 4 of their scoring drives were 10 plays or more, and they only scored 20 points because of that. And on 3 of the 4 drives, they were majorly aided by penalties, which I'm going to get into a bit later. Okay, like this offense with Joe Flacco it's just not very good. It's just not very good. And I know what you're going to say. Oh, well, what about the Jacksonville game? Who you're playing against matters. Okay, that the Jags have the worst pass defense in the NFL, and it's not close. Okay, like the Colts simply aren't very explosive when Joe Flacco is in the game. Okay, the run game when he's in isn't very good. I know Jonathan Taylor's been out, but if Anthony Richardson was in the game, the run game would be better. Because not only could Anthony Richardson carry the football, but just the threat of him being back there just opens it up for the other guys, whoever's standing beside him. I think we can all agree on that the run game is better for the Colts when Anthony Richardson is on the field. When it comes to Joe Flacco, he can win games against the Titans, who are 1-4. He can win games against the Jaguars, who are 1-5. And if he comes in when the Colts already have a lead, he can do enough to hold on to it. That is what we've seen from Joe Flacco so far. If Flacco has to play against the Dolphins on Sunday, the Colts will be fine. They'll probably win that game because the Dolphins are awful. But the following week, when the Colts enter into a tough 3-game stretch, right, starting with the Texans, if he's the starting quarterback that week, the Colts will get their doors blown off. Okay, because they simply won't be good enough offensively with Joe Flacco in there to keep up with this high-powered offense of the Texans. Okay, they aren't explosive enough offensively with Joe Flacco in the game to beat better teams. While Joe Flacco is a luxury as a backup. Okay, he's good. He's reliable. One of the best backups in the NFL. All those things. Like, that is a nice thing to have because there are a lot of teams in the NFL that don't have that. While it's nice to have, the Colts need Anthony Richardson if they want to beat the better teams in the NFL. Like, let's just be honest here. The Colts barely beat the Titans yesterday, who were awful. They're awful. Like, they won 20-17. The Colts offensively didn't really do anything well. They didn't run the ball well. They averaged 2.9 yards a carry. They didn't throw the ball very well. Flacco only completed 58% of his passes. He didn't break the 200-yard mark. Okay? The reason why the Colts won yesterday wasn't because of Joe Flacco. It was because Will Levis is terrible, and Shane Steichen is simply a better coach than Brian Callahan up to this point. Brian Callahan only coached 5 games so far, so tough to really kind of write who he is as a coach in stone. But, he's not a better coach than, as of right now, is Shane Steichen. Okay, while Joe Flacco outplaying Will Levis, which isn't saying a lot, played a big role in the Colts win yesterday, I would be wrong to ignore Shane Steichen's contribution. I thought he called plays well. That first drive was a thing of beauty. The naked bootleg to Michael Pittman Jr. late, right before the 2-minute warning to pick up an important first down was big. That iced the game. Like, as soon as the Colts got that first down, I was like, this game's over. Okay, I thought that call was great. I thought he was aggressive at the right times. I thought he was conservative at the right times. More than that, though, the Colts were disciplined. The more disciplined football team won that game yesterday. Okay, the Titans were not disciplined. The Colts committed 5 penalties and gave up 40 yards off of them. That's it. The Titans, on the other hand, committed 11 penalties and gave up 113 yards off of them. And that was a major difference in the game. Neither team, neither the Titans nor the Colts, had 300 yards of total offense. And the Titans just gave the Colts an extra 113 yards. That was a major difference. That played a major role in the outcome of the game yesterday. Okay, look at the Colts scoring possessions, or their last 3 scoring possessions. All right, when the Colts kicked a field goal to tie the game at 10-10, it only happened because Tennessee committed a pass interference that wiped a Joe Flacco interception off the board. On the drive that the Colts kicked a second field goal to make the score 17-13, it only happened because of a pass interference penalty on the Titans and a roughing the passer penalty. Okay, it was like 20 yards on those 2 plays. That's a fifth of the field. Okay, on the Colts' second touchdown drive where they took the lead and Michael Pittman Jr. made a great play in the end zone. It only happened because L'Jarius Sneed committed pass interference on a ball that Joe Flacco overthrew Alec Pierce on, and it resulted in a 33-yard penalty that moved the Colts into the red zone. 6 plays later, which is absurd that it took them 6 plays in the red zone to score, 6 plays later, the Colts threw that touchdown pass to Michael Pittman Jr. 3 of the Colts' 4 scoring drives were majorly aided by the Titans committing undisciplined penalties. Okay, the Colts and the Titans both played a ton of man-to-man defense yesterday. Okay, and I thought, and the biggest difference was that the Colts corners, Womack and Jones, were able to defend Hopkins and Ridley without giving up big pass interference penalties. Okay, like that was a major difference in the game, and that doesn't need to be overlooked because it's a large part of why the Colts won. Okay, disciplined defense, all right, and disciplined teams don't commit penalties. Disciplined teams don't false start. They don't jump off sides. They don't do anything of that. They just don't. And discipline starts at the top, and for the Colts, it starts with Shane Steichen. Great win yesterday for the Colts. They're 3-3, should be 4-3 after this upcoming Sunday because the Miami Dolphins aren't very good. And Tua still shouldn't be back yet, right? The Dolphins have him projected to come back at the earliest week 8. Okay, so good job by the Colts. Way to be disciplined. Okay, the defense only gave up 17 points, didn't give up 300 yards of total offense, but it doesn't matter. This defense still isn't very good. Who you play against matters, and I'm going to tell you why when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hope you had a nice weekend. Big time win by the Colts yesterday. Defense played well, but don't get excited. Relativity, who you're playing against, it's important. Okay, I was playing pickup basketball on Friday night because my wife was out of town, and usually Friday nights or date nights, we go out, we do, whatever. And, she was gone. So I was sitting around on Friday night. I was like, what am I going to do? I played video games for a little bit, but I got bored. It's like, is there anything I want to watch? Like, is there like a movie I haven't seen? No, not really. What I want to do, I want to go play basketball. So I did. I went, played some pickup. I won't lie to you. I cooked. Okay, scored a lot of points. Okay, like it was good. I was given a great compliment while giving out buckets, like the way I'm going to give out Halloween candy here in a couple weeks. All right, after breaking a guy's ankles, making him touch the earth, sending him to the floor, whatever you want to say. Drove left, threw up a pump fake. Defender flew by. I then stepped through and hit a little shot. Pretty easy move, okay? It's, one of my go-tos. And after those events transpired, I heard a guy on the opposing team yell, quote, "That cold-ass white boy has a bag," and I won't lie. It made me feel really good. Didn't smile, but I felt pretty good about myself. The truth, though, is that it only appeared that I had a bag because I was playing against guys that were playing pickup at an LA Fitness on a Friday night. If I'd done those moves against any NBA player, then I would have been made to look terrible. Okay, relativity, who you're playing against is important. It matters. Just take Joe Flacco. Okay, 22 of 38 for 189 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. So completing 58% of your passes for less than 200 yards, for only 5 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns and a bad interception. That's good enough to beat the Titans. Okay, Joe Flacco, 16 of 26 for 168 yards. So once again, not even 200 yards passing. A yards per attempt of only 6.5, 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. That's good enough when you enter the game with a 2-possession lead against the Steelers to win. Okay, and then of course against Jacksonville 2 weeks ago, against the worst passing defense in the NFL, he absolutely lit it up because once again, it was the worst passing defense in the NFL. Who you play against matters. It does. This Titans offense isn't good. And because of that, this Colts defense looked better than what it actually is. The Titans are likely going to be looking for a new quarterback in this next draft. So don't get excited about this defense. It's still not very good. Here is Indianapolis Colts head coach Shane Steichen getting excited about this Colts defense.
Ryan Kelly's got a calf. I'll start off with that. Gosh, what a great team win. I mean, they're never easy, especially going on the road against a division opponent. Shout out to our defense. Shout out to those guys. They stepped up big time there in the fourth quarter for us, getting those stops. Shout out to our defensive coaches with the plan they had. I think they only had, 239 yards. So great job by the defense. So hell of a team win.
Indianapolis Colts head coach Shane Steichen right there talking about the defense and how well they played and all these things. Look, I touched on this last week. I said that the Colts defense was going to look better this week, but not because they got better, but just because they're playing against one of the worst offenses in the NFL and the worst quarterback in the NFL. Now, look, you have to give them some credit, right? Because they still went out there and they still made the plays that were required of them. But my opinion on them and your opinion on them shouldn't change because they stopped Will Levis and the Titans. Okay? And guess what? If they play well this week against the Dolphins, who are at the bottom of the league. They are dead last in points scored per game at 12.5. Okay? It's a terrible offense. If they play well this week against that Dolphins team, guess what? My opinion on them and your opinion on this Colts defense should not change because the Dolphins without Tua aren't very good. Okay, the Colts still gave up over 5 yards a carry yesterday. 5 yards a carry. The run defense, the front seven, once again, wasn't good. It wasn't. Giving up a 23-yard touchdown run on 3rd and 19 is simply unacceptable. Every team, every single team in the NFL with a young quarterback in that spot, 3rd and 19, in field goal range, just want to get some points. Every team in the NFL with a young quarterback in that spot is running a draw. Okay? I wrote it down here on my notes. I was like, draw is coming. And sure enough, Titans run a draw. For some reason, the Colts aren't ready for it, even though it was the most predictable thing that happened all day. Okay? Not even just in that game, but all day amidst all of the football games that happened. That was the most predictable thing that happened yesterday. And the Colts weren't ready for it. They were so unprepared for it that they gave up a touchdown. Like, what? And that's the issue with this defense. It just feels like things that should be easy, they make difficult. And you're not going to beat good teams when you do things like that. Stuff like that simply cannot happen. Okay, that's what bad defenses do, and that's what the Colts have. They have a bad defense. The front seven wasn't very good. When you're playing against Will Levis, who the Colts don't want throwing the ball past the line of scrimmage, who the Titans don't want throwing the ball past the line of scrimmage. You know that they're going to run the ball a lot. The Titans ran the ball 28 times yesterday for 146 yards. That's over 5 yards a carry. You can't give that up to a team that you know is going to rely heavily on the run. Coming into the game, I was like, you know what the Colts should do? They should just load the box and say, okay, Will Levis, go try to beat us. Okay, or maybe that's not what they should have done because they won the game. Either way, that defense yesterday wasn't very good. That front seven wasn't very good once again. Now, to give credit where credit is due, the back end of the defense played well. Nick Cross was second for the Colts in tackles. Okay, that's impressive. I feel like when bad things happen, he's usually not the reason, which is an improvement from last year. Jalen Jones continues to do a good job as a cover corner. Okay, defended DeAndre Hopkins a lot yesterday, and he did a good job. Okay, Samuel Womack, right, a guy that the Colts picked up because the 49ers cut him from their practice squad. Yeah, he played really well. Primarily defended Calvin Ridley, who had 8 targets for 0 catches. Like, that is impressive. The secondary for the Colts yesterday did what they should have done against this caliber of quarterback. And this caliber of quarterback is nothing short of awful. And that's why you shouldn't be surprised when the Titans draft a new quarterback this upcoming NFL draft. When I was in early middle school, so like 6th grade, I collected baseball cards for fun. You know, I've got a few hundred baseball cards lying in a box somewhere in my parents' attic in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And in the church we were at, there was this guy who collected baseball cards like very seriously. Okay, like went to conventions, and I know that's become more of a popular thing over the past couple of years, but we're talking like 13 years ago, you know, before it really kind of became what it is now. And, you know, like I said, he would go to conventions and all those things. And my dad told this guy that I collected baseball cards, and he invited my dad and me along with him, or to tag along with him to one of these conventions. And he was like, bring your cards, all those things. And my dad and I had a long conversation about it because I was like, yeah, like let's go. This sounds cool. My dad was like, you cannot go. And that didn't sit very well with me. And I just remember asking him why. Like, why can't I go to this thing? And his response was, now looking back, very smart. And he basically looked at me. He was like, Jonathan, I don't know the value of the cards that you have. And he goes, and you don't know the value of the cards that you have. And he was right. Like, I had no clue. Like, for me, collecting baseball cards was about finding players that I liked, and it was about finding cool photos. Like, that was really all that mattered, right? Whenever it came to me collecting cards. And so because I didn't know the value of what I had, my dad wouldn't let me go, which makes sense because the last thing that you want to do is give away a card worth a lot of money for one that just has a cool picture of Alfonso Soriano, who I really liked at that time. Okay, it is important to know what you have. Okay, the Titans have an edge over the Colts right now because they know without a shadow of a doubt that Will Levis isn't the future at quarterback for their franchise. Okay, they are 14 starts into his career, and there hasn't been that many positives. The Titans know that at the end of the year, they can move on from Will Levis. Meanwhile, the Colts have no clue because their young quarterback can't stay on the field. He can't. All right. And when he's healthy enough to play, like he was on Sunday, the Colts decide to hold him out. Meanwhile, the Titans sent Will Levis out there with a grade 2 sprain in his AC joint in his throwing shoulder. But hey, whatever. And this is ultimately why not playing Will Levis is an issue. Or excuse me, this is why not playing Anthony Richardson is an issue. Like, you have to figure out what you have at that position. Teams like the Panthers, the Titans, the Raiders, they have an advantage over the Colts right now, even though all three of them are worse than the Colts are right now. But they all know that they're going to draft a new quarterback after this year. The Panthers know that Bryce Young isn't their future. The Titans know that Will Levis isn't their future. The Raiders know that Aiden O'Connell isn't their future. Teams that know who they are and what they have possess a huge advantage, no matter how good or bad they are, because it allows them to know what direction they need to move in. For example, the Chiefs, who are really good, they knew coming into this draft that they lacked explosiveness on the outside at receiver. And because they knew that, they were able to move up in the draft and take Xavier Worthy, one of the most explosive receivers, that we've seen in quite some time. Okay? Chris Ballard has no idea what he has anywhere. He sees 9-8 and assumes that means that everyone is good enough to be brought back on new contracts. Right? And that's an issue in and of itself, and it's a large part as to why the Colts have peddled in mediocrity for so long. They have a misunderstanding about what they have at every position. And even if they figure all of those other positions out, it will not matter unless they figure out what they have at quarterback. Titans, the Panthers, the Raiders are in better spots right now compared to the Colts because they know what they don't have at the quarterback spot. Okay. And that is an advantage. Just is. The Colts have no idea what they have with Anthony Richardson. They know that they have a big athletic dude that struggles to stay healthy. Right? They have no idea as to whether or not he can be the future of their franchise. And that is an issue that needs to be figured out sooner rather than later if they want to get the franchise moving in the proper direction. Okay, one thing that they do have figured out is Shane Steichen. Okay, he's a good coach. Gardner Minshew's backing up Aiden O'Connell, and Shane Steichen figured out a way to win 9 games with that guy last year. That is an impressive feat. Okay, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're in deep trouble. Doug Pederson's going to be fired soon, just kind of waiting for that notification that Doug Pederson has been fired to hit my phone. I'm assuming it's going to happen at some point this week. Okay, when your head coach, Doug Pederson, stands up at the podium after starting 1-5 and says, we need a culture change, that is usually an indicator that he needs to be fired. Okay, just, brief thoughts on that. But, they might wait until they get back from London, but he's not going to last much longer. Okay, so the Jaguars have struck out in terms of who they wanted to hire as their head coach. And I'm interested to see what they do with Trevor Lawrence going forward. Paying him $55 million a year. And this contract just started. They just gave him this contract this previous offseason. They are paying him a ton of money, but they could trade him. They could. I don't think they will. I think they're going to go hire, a young offensive head coach, maybe like a Bobby Slowick from the Texans, right? They're going to go try and hire a head coach to fix this mistake that they made in giving him all this money. Okay. But they could trade him. There's undoubtedly a team out there that would be willing to make a deal for him just because he's a former number 1 overall pick who is insanely talented. Like, that is who Trevor Lawrence is. I know he's been struggling, but, if you watch the game yesterday that happened in the morning, I mean, the Jags dropped like 3 touchdown passes. Gabe Davis dropped 2. But anyway, that's beside the point. The Jags, they're in an interesting spot. I'm very intrigued to see kind of when they fire Doug Pederson, how do they kind of operate from there? The Colts got to hurry up and figure out who Anthony Richardson is. Like, seriously, like they've got to figure that out sooner rather than later. And the only way to do that is to play him. The Titans, they're going to draft a new quarterback, and the Houston Texans, I mean, they're sailing away. Stroud looks great. They're 5-1. DeMeco Ryans can really coach. Like, that's a really good football team. So that's going to do it here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in about 5 minutes.